She was stunningly beautiful but never dared to look in the mirror because she could see the devil in the mirror. But her husband Kevin was even more awesome. He had a father even the devil feared. And Kevin came here today to kill his father. But after unloading an entire magazine, his father was completely unharmed.
Who are you? I have so many names. Satan. Call me Dad.
Before meeting Satan, Kevin was the top lawyer in town, won 63 consecutive cases without a single loss. But today, he faced his toughest challenge yet. A high school teacher had called a girl into his office after school. Then he made her play cards with him. As the teacher's defense attorney, Kevin initially believed he was wrongly accused. But during the girl's testimony, the teacher reenacted the crime right in front of everyone. Kevin caught it, and he immediately knew this monster had done it. Under Kevin's gaze, the teacher quickly put on a facade of innocence. Kevin immediately requested a recess, but the monster followed him outside, claiming the girl was lying, but Kevin coldly told him to take his filthy hands off. Kevin angrily found himself stuck in a moral dilemma. If he defended the teacher, he'd betray his conscience, but dropping the case would end his winning streak, potentially wrecking his career. As Kevin struggled to decide, a journalist sitting in the gallery mocked him. The evidence was overwhelming, and there was no way Kevin could win. This was the first time Satan met Kevin, but Kevin clearly didn't recognize Satan. Fueled by Satan's taunts, Kevin decided to fight for his reputation. In his defense, the teacher became a dedicated educator who shaped young minds. Yet the girl was painted as a delinquent troublemaker. She secretly spread rumors about the teacher, even drew a cartoon of him as a giant pig and passed it around the class. Under Kevin's relentless arguments, the teacher was declared not guilty. As Kevin basked in his victory, a man approached him. The man invited Kevin to take on a case in New York. Win or lose, the pay would be astronomical. Kevin thought it was a joke and didn't take him seriously. But then the man pulled out a massive check, and Kevin froze on the spot. But the black man had one unusual request. Kevin's wife had to come along. He promised first-class tickets and a 5-star hotel. Thinking they'd be fools to pass up such a deal, the couple happily flew to New York. As expected, Kevin won the case with ease, and the bustling charm of New York captivated them. But when Kevin said goodbye to his employer, the man extended an offer he couldn't ignore. This was Satan's second meeting with Kevin. Kevin still didn't know the man. John was his father. To keep Kevin, John offered him the top position in his legal department. He also gifted Kevin a luxurious apartment. The black couple who invited Kevin to New York had worked 6 years just to afford a place in that building, and John, with all his power, lived in the penthouse. The offer was tempting, but Kevin stayed cautious.
Look, Mary, only getting behind this if you're on board. You want to go home? I'm with you.
When he asked Mary for her thoughts, she immediately chose to stay in glamorous New York. Neither of them realized they were walking into a massive trap. As Kevin got busier with work, Mary grew lonelier. She'd been working since she was 13, so doing nothing made her feel lost and empty. When Mary vented her frustration, their neighbor told her she didn't know how lucky she was. The neighbor said she had to schedule a week in advance just to see her own husband. Mary found this absurd.
God, how do you handle it?
But the neighbor suggested 3 ways to adapt: find a job, live it up, or have a baby. In the days that followed, Mary got a new haircut and started roaming the streets of New York with her neighbor. But one day, while they were out shopping, Mary saw something terrifying. Her neighbor's face turned into that of a demon. Mary ran away in fear. Meanwhile, Kevin was out partying. When Mary called to tell him, Kevin brushed it off and told her not to badmouth their neighbor. He reminded her that their good life was all thanks to John. Then he hung up and continued laughing and drinking with John. When Mary woke up, it was already past midnight. Strange noises came from the other room, and she thought Kevin had finally come home. But as she called out to him, no one answered. Mary immediately grew alert. She grabbed a knife and headed toward the source of the noise. But when she burst into the room, she saw a baby sitting on the nursery floor. Having a child with Kevin had always been her biggest dream. Mary dropped the knife and started talking to the baby. Then she noticed the baby was holding a bloody uterus. Terrified, Mary stumbled back. Blood started pouring from her abdomen. But when Kevin came home the next day, her bloody nightgown was spotless, as if nothing had happened. Mary screamed that her uterus was ruined, and she could no longer give Kevin a child. Feeling guilty, Kevin tried to calm her down, saying it was all just a dream. He promised they'd have a baby soon. But while playing cards, Kevin couldn't stop thinking about the female executive at work, and the thought thrilled him. Mary's illness soon reached John's ears. He suggested Kevin take a break and spend time with her, but drunk on fame and success, Kevin refused.
You know what scares me? I quit the case, she gets better, and I hate her for it.
Even though he knew John's work was immoral, he couldn't stop himself from sinking deeper into it. To focus entirely on his case, Kevin brought his mother to New York. He thought her presence would help Mary feel better. But as soon as they got back to the apartment, they ran into John, and he wasn't alone. 2 stunning women were with him. When John greeted them, Kevin's kind and understanding mother panicked. She refused to say a word to John, which was odd, but Kevin didn't think much of it. His attention was locked on the two women. Later, John invited Kevin to his place to discuss the case. But when Kevin saw his wife waiting by the door, he smiled knowingly and declined John's invitation. Before Kevin could step inside, Mary exploded in anger, accusing him of fooling around at work every day. Kevin snapped back, calling her accusations ridiculous. What Kevin didn't expect was what happened the next morning. His mother, his so-called backup, said she was leaving and she was taking Mary with her. Furious, Kevin told his mother flatly, "This is my home. No one is taking Mary away from me." Kevin slammed the door and stormed out. After his mother left without a word, Mary's condition spiraled out of control. She ended up sitting naked, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly at a church. When Kevin confronted her, Mary broke down, crying that John had assaulted her that afternoon. But Kevin suddenly lost his temper. John had been in court all afternoon, and Kevin hadn't taken his eyes off him for a second. To prove she wasn't lying, Mary dropped the blanket, revealing her body covered in bruises. Seeing her like this broke Kevin's heart. He thought Mary was so far gone that she had started harming herself. Kevin had no choice but to send her to a mental hospital. Mary begged him to return to their small town and start over together. But Kevin couldn't give up the wealth and luxury of the city. Before leaving, he told her to focus on getting better. He promised to bring his mother back soon to keep her company. As soon as he stepped out of the hospital, investigators from the Justice Department stopped Kevin. Ignoring Kevin's obvious distress, they began rattling off a long list of John's crimes: arms trafficking, money laundering, assassinations. Every crime imaginable, John was involved. They wanted Kevin to testify and bring the devil down. But Kevin, overwhelmed, told them to get lost. The investigators didn't back off. They told him the teacher he had helped clear of charges in a harassment case had gone on to murder another young girl. That stopped Kevin in his tracks. Sensing an opening, the investigator moved closer. But out of nowhere, a speeding taxi slammed into him, killing him instantly. It was clearly John's doing. To drag Kevin even deeper into the abyss, John had his female subordinate reveal her demonic face, completely shattering Mary's mental state. Under the immense pressure, Mary took her own life. Watching the love of his life die in front of him, the once invincible Kevin was powerless. Heartbroken, his mother decided it was time to reveal a shocking truth. 30 years ago, she had been to New York, where a one-night stand had left her pregnant with Kevin, the man who had abandoned her, John. And that was the real reason Kevin had risen so quickly in New York. Kevin, after learning the truth, confronted John. John detailed the horrific things he had done to Mary. Furious, Kevin pulled out a gun and opened fire. But even after emptying the entire magazine, he couldn't hurt John at all. Kevin accused John of being a liar, someone who had dragged him step by step into the abyss. John, unfazed, told Kevin it was all his own doing. "You came to New York chasing wealth, defended guilty people for fame, ignored your wife for your desires, and even imagined her as the company executive you have been obsessed with." Kevin was left speechless. Seeing the moment was right, John called in the company executive, the woman Kevin had been dreaming about. But she wasn't just his dream girl, she was his half-sister. John had countless children in the human world, but only Kevin and this daughter were truly exceptional. John's ultimate goal? To have Kevin and his sister work together and create a child with extraordinary gifts. That child, John claimed, would grant them ultimate power over the world. But the plan required Kevin's free will. To convince him, John offered Kevin an irresistible deal: unlimited physical pleasures, unimaginable wealth, and even a way to erase all guilt from his conscience. Faced with this incredible offer, Kevin made his choice.
Free will, right?
As Kevin walked away, John's rage boiled over. The entire room erupted in flames, burning so fiercely that even his daughter was reduced to a charred corpse. Then in an instant, John transformed into Kevin. The next thing Kevin knew, he was back in his small town, brooding over the case of the middle school teacher. Everything that had happened felt like a distant dream. Later, he returned to the courtroom. Seeing Mary sitting there, beautiful and serene, Kevin couldn't help but kiss her. Then he announced in court that he was dropping the defense for the teacher. The room was stunned. Reporters swarmed him. Even the one who had mocked Kevin before seized the chance. "If you give me an exclusive interview," the reporter said, "I'll make sure your story dominates the headlines. A lawyer with a conscience chooses to ruin his career rather than defend a corrupt teacher. You'll be a hero, a viral sensation. And with the wealth the king of the underworld can bring, what's there to lose?" Kevin thought for a moment and agreed. But as they left, the reporter revealed his true figure.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.